My name is Michelle Zangari. I've lived here in the village for almost 20 years, and thank you for the opportunity to appeal to you tonight. I've already emailed some of you. So I am here tonight to appeal to the board, asking for an amendment to the existing use code, which would prohibit houses of worship in residential zones, not talking about existing houses of worship that would be grandfathered in, but new ones. And this is the reason why. Last week, I was made aware that a property in the village, 9 Marlborough Court, had a large menorah on their front lawn. It looks to me, when I drove by, it's almost 8 feet tall. Many of the surrounding neighbors assumed it was maybe a Hanukkah decoration left up too long. However, I know all too well that is not the case. The menorah is a standard symbol in synagogues. It designates a building or structure, or in this case, a single-family residence being used as a small synagogue or prayer house. I'm very familiar with that since I grew up in the Five Towns, where many, many homes were turned into synagogues and have menorahs either on their exterior property, including one on the block I grew up on. This is very emotional for anyone who lived through the transformation of the Five Towns. Many of those people live in Rockville Centre now. It started in the mid-'80s and was pretty complete by the early 2000s. It's only around 20 years, and that area was much larger than this village. It began exactly this way. Rabbis and their families purchased homes, creating synagogues, small synagogues. Congregants then looked to buy property nearby, and residents would get written offers for their unlisted homes in their mailbox, which happened to my own parents many times over the years. Due to the increased demand, real estate values soared, so many residents ready to relocate or downsize accepted these offers, and really, who could blame them? I mean, then they went to the businesses, asking them to close on Saturdays. That practice has been denied many times in the press. However, I know for sure that went on. I worked at the bakery in Cedarhurst. I watched them speak to my boss, who was also a Rockville Centre resident, many times. Anyway, soon enough, seats on the school board were won by Orthodox men. The schools declined since they weren't being supported properly. Rather, they just began being used for transportation services to private schools. In recent years, school buildings, including my old elementary school, were sold to the highest bidder. In some of the towns, the populations have become almost exclusively Orthodox. They moved into the areas, not necessarily to take over, but because they have to be able to walk to synagogue on Saturdays. As you might imagine, existing residents of those areas are less than pleased when neighboring homes used as small synagogues started to grow in congregants, resulting in large crowds during the Sabbath and once it was over. Eventually, both Orthodox and non-Orthodox residents, along with municipalities, end up in court. They're fighting zoning laws, right to assemble and worship, noise and crowd ordinances, the list goes on. Cases have actually even gone up to the Supreme Court. When I called the building department about the menorah on that property, they told me they had already received calls and complaints. I would imagine you all may have received emails and calls as well. It's clear as residents will have issues with homes turning into houses of worship, especially once it's understood that those properties will be exempt from paying property taxes. Since the town will not likely take a cut in tax revenue, I can only imagine taxes would be redistributed and increased for those current residents. This is not with the exemption. It's not isolated to Long Island. This has happened in Maryland, California, et cetera. This may sound extreme. Many people think you sound crazy. I get it. You may think it could never happen here, but trust me, none of us that were living in the Five Towns thought it would happen there either. When I decided to move to Rockville Centre and raise my family here, I heard the refrain from so many people, don't worry, the cathedral's there. The seat of the diocese is here. Well, the diocese building was sold. There is now a menorah at least 8 feet high on the front lawn of a home a few blocks from mine, and I'm worried. The Five Towns was just like Rockville Centre. Our school district was stellar, championship sport teams, national merit scholars, Westinghouse finalists, and a very strong special ed program we called Life Skills, which is just like the core program at Southside High School. The former principal of Southside High School, Carol Burris, was actually my 7th grade Spanish teacher at Lawrence. We had an extremely involved alumni, parent groups, huge homecoming parades, or downtown, or town, as we called it, was filled with restaurants, bars, coffee shops, dance studios, music schools. Our retail shopping was like a South Shore Americana mall. We had many professional offices, mechanics, plumbing, electrical companies. We had multiple churches of all denominations and Reform synagogues. We had a strong K-8 Catholic school, just like St. Agnes. We had families that lived there for generations. Everyone knew everyone, just like the generational families in Rockville Centre. Not being able to raise my family in the town I grew up in was heartbreaking, and the idea that they won't be able to do that is even worse. Please understand, this has nothing to do with religion. This is about community and the residents and business owners that make up our village. You have all been elected to serve the residents of our village. I am asking you to amend the code so a synagogue cannot be on every residential street like they are in the Five Towns. Please believe me and other Five Towns transplants who know it can happen because we watched it. You have a fiduciary responsibility as well. Use the Five Towns as a cautionary tale of a community that literally does not exist anymore, and take proactive measures. Strengthen our code now to avoid litigation and lawsuits. Mayor Murray, I know you lobbied in Albany to protect residential zones. Please do the same for our village. Keep our residential areas as they are, grandfathered in clauses for the existing houses of worship, but protecting the single and multifamily residences for remaining as they were meant to be used, not as houses of worship. There would be significant litigation risk if the village delays amending the code until after multiple prayer houses or synagogues are established. Please work with your attorneys to amend the code immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I've gotten, and I guess I don't know about the rest of the trustees, many emails from concerned people. And I spoke to the administrator, and I immediately, as I answered a lot of those, spoke to our village attorney. He'll be back next week. He's going to prepare the board, notify the board, and enlighten us of the actual law we have on the books, Rockville Centre, and possibly what we can do to amend it. So the board will be very concerned.
Thank you.
And look into it immediately.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.